Yesterday at 11, huge news broke that could possibly change the outcome of the election in Trump's favor. In Pennsylvania, state judge upholds halt to certification, finds likelihood mail-in balloting procedures violate Pennsylvania Constitution. Now, obviously, that would be a pretty huge win. It would essentially nullify any ability for them to elect their electoral college, and it would make it so that they could no longer give their 20 electoral college votes towards Biden, which would just then begin the process of lowering Biden's electoral college victory that he has right now below the 270 threshold, which would then delegate it to the House. It says here, a Pennsylvania state court judge has issued a preliminary injunction preventing Pennsylvania from taking any further steps to perfect its certification of the election, including but not limited to appointment of electors and transmission of necessary paperwork to the Electoral College, pending further court hearings and rulings. The ruling upholds an injunction from earlier in the week, and it's significant because of the findings made in the opinion released tonight. The issue in this case is whether legislative expansion of the absentee balloting to broad mail-in balloting violated the Pennsylvania Constitution. It's not clear what the relief would be. The petitioners seek to preclude the Secretary of State from transmitting the certification of or otherwise perfecting the Electoral College selections. Earlier in the week, Judge Patricia McAuliffe issued a temporary halt to the certification process, and that is now on appeal to Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The judge issued this opinion to extend that halt pending further hearings and to set forth the basis for the injunction, which could be relevant to the appeal. So the reason that this could be such a large win for Trump is because if this were to go through, it would set a statement for how other states could follow. Typically, you don't want to be the first one to make such a drastic action because that would put you in the spotlight. So if one state were to do it, the others could have the domino effect and would follow suit, which would be a huge win and could essentially flip many of these states where similar things have occurred. It says here, quote, as this court's November 25th, 2020 order of an emergency preliminary injunction has been appealed to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, this opinion shall set forth the basis for said order and shall also satisfy the requirements of Rule 1925 of the Pennsylvania Rules of Appellate Procedure. Here is the judge's description of the claim. In the petition, petitioners allege that the Act of October 31st, 2019, number 77, Act 77, which they enacted, which added an amended various absentee and mail-in voting provision in the Pennsylvania Election Code. One is unconstitutional and void ab initio. Yes, I did have to Google that word. I've never seen it before. Because it purportedly contravenes the requirements of the Pennsylvania Constitution. So, of course, I have the enactments that they put forth here, and man, they are wild. I didn't even know that this was the case, but they're wild. So here we have Governor Wolf signs historic election reform bill, including new mail-in voting, which he's not allowed to do. There's actually a pretty extensive process that they have to follow in order to get new election laws in, and I mean it is extensive, but necessary, obviously. One of the things, no excuse mail-in voting. The law creates a new option to vote by mail without providing an excuse, which is currently required by voters using absentee ballots. Pennsylvania joins 31 other states and Washington, D.C. with mail-in voting that removes barriers to elections. I cannot say with certainty that these other states are allowed to do that. Evidently, this is within Pennsylvania's own constitutional laws that they are not allowed to do such a thing, as we will see later. It's mentioned later in the previous article. 50-day mail-in voting period. Wow. Permanent mail-in and absentee ballot list. Like what? It's as if you're filling out for a Kohl's article that you're getting mailed every single month. But this is for voting for an elected official. That is obviously a way to get people who are not informed about current politics to vote. I mean, you're just getting a ballot sent to your house, which is essentially as easy as it gets to vote on. 15 more days to register to vote. Extends mail-in and absentee submission deadlines, which clearly would be, as the law states, absentee voting ballots need to have the same requirements and jurisdiction as in-person voting. So that clearly is a violation if certain deadlines are extended, extra days to register. It clearly does not make it a level playing field. And the Democrats know that because their base votes on not knowing stuff, primarily. And that's no dig at people who vote Democratic. You can vote for whoever you want. I'm not going to judge anyone who votes. I just think you really should know with all your heart and with all your facts. You need to have the facts and the hearts, all right? It says here, the changes do not impact the November 5th, 2019 election, but they definitely did. I mean, these went into place right away, which, as we will see, is also unconstitutional. Petitioners allege that Article 7, Section 14 of the Pennsylvania Constitution provides two exclusive mechanisms by which a qualified elector may cast his or her vote in an election. One, by submitting his or her vote in propria persona, did not have to look that one up, at the polling place on election day, and two, by submitting an absentee ballot, but only if the qualified voter satisfies the conditions precedent to meet the requirement of one of the four limited exclusive circumstances under which absentee voting is authorized under the Pennsylvania Constitution. So here we have the Article 7 of the Constitution for Pennsylvania, and it clearly states here, absentee voting. The legislature shall, by general law, provide a manner in which, and the time and place at which qualified electors who may, on the occurrence of any election, be absent from the municipality of their residence, because their duties, occupation, or business require them to be elsewhere, or who, on the occurrence of any election, are unable to attend at their proper polling places because of illness or physical disability, or who will not attend a polling place because of the observance of a religious holiday, or who cannot vote because of the election day duties, in the case of a county employee, may vote, and for the return of a canvass of their votes in the election district in which they respectively reside. So that's pretty cut and dry on the certain issues that would actually allow you to get away with requesting an absentee ballot. And clearly, the things provided here that they ran through just before the election to make sure that they can squeeze everything they got for the votes. So clearly, these different stipulations that they have mandated here do not follow at all the Pennsylvania Constitution, which would clearly nullify and make them unable to certify the voting, because how do you determine which of the ballots were proper? I mean, I'm sure that you could go through every single little scrutinous detail and try and figure it out, but at that point, it's just too extensive. So I would assume that the certification of the Electoral College would just be blocked, and it would go to a delegation, I believe. Petitioners allege that mail-in voting in the form implemented through Act 77 is an attempt by the legislature to fundamentally overhaul the Pennsylvania voting system and permit universal, no-excuse mail-in voting absent any constitutional authority, which we clearly saw prior. That does seem to be exactly the case. Petitioners argue that in order to amend the Constitution, mandatory procedural requirements must be strictly followed. Specifically, pursuant to Article 11, Section 1, a proposed constitutional amendment must be approved by a majority vote of the member of both the Pennsylvania House of Representatives and Senate in 2 consecutive legislative sessions. Then, the proposed amendment must be published for 3 months ahead of the next general election in 2 newspapers in each county. And finally, it must be submitted to the qualified electors as a ballot question in the next general election, and approved by a majority for those voting on the amendment. Now, man, oh man, that our founding fathers, they must have had insane foresight. I can't even imagine, to make all the different stipulations. Now, I know that this is specifically the Constitution of Pennsylvania, but still, these laws have been in place for a fairly long time, which Democrats clearly do not like anymore. They want to get rid of them so that they can have the power, because, that's what they're about. But this may seem like something that's a little too overextensive. It's too hard to get the rules changed, but that's the entire purpose of it. The Founding Fathers found America based on these principles, and they made it gridlocked to the point where you can't entirely overhaul the system. And don't get me wrong, there are certain ways that still seem a little uncharacteristic that may need a little tweaking in the future. However, they clearly made it so that you can't overhaul everything. According to petitioners, the legislature did not follow the necessary procedures for amending the Constitution before enabling an Act 77, which created a new category of mail-in voting. Therefore, the mail-in ballot scheme under Act 77 is unconstitutional on its face and must be struck down. As relief, petitioners seek, I didn't Google this one, damn it, inter alia, I don't know, a declaration and or injunction that prohibits respondents from certifying the November 2020 general election results, which include mail-in ballots that are permitted on a statewide basis and are allegedly improper because Act 77 is unconstitutional. And I'm not a judge, but this guy is, and he's seeming to side that way as well. Obviously, there will be more hearings and rulings in the future, but it truly does seem like something that is in the works. A pretty big victory. It's not necessarily a victory yet, but it is something in the works that I would deem very prudent to Trump winning in the future. And if this case does go through and manages to block certification and it goes to a delegation, it would be good news for Trump. It drop Joe Biden down 20 votes or 20 electoral college points, and I believe other states would follow there soon after. That'll be it for this one, though. Pretty big dubskis out here. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.